Hi, it's Roger here from What's on DisneyPlus.com. A quick news update for you guys on the negotiations for Hulu continue. But before we go any further, make sure you do hit that subscribe button to keep up with the latest Disney Plus news. So if you're unaware, back in 2019 when Disney purchased 20th Century Fox, it acquired an additional 30% of Hulu. Now at the time, Disney owned 30%, Fox owned 30, Comcast owned 30, and whatever Time Warner or Warner Brothers Discovery was called at the time, they owned 10%. With Disney getting that extra 30%, Warner Brothers sewed up, they got rid of their 10%, and that left Disney with 66%, Comcast with 33%. Now with that there, they made an agreement at the time that Disney would take over full operational control of Hulu and kind of run it, while Comcast would just sort of sit back. Comcast would still have to put some money into Hulu on a yearly basis. However, there was a little bit of a thing in there which I'll get into in a minute. Now, as part of the agreement, they agreed that in 2024, either Comcast or Disney could use a put-call agreement in place where Disney or Comcast could say, look, Disney, you're going to give us some money. And at which point, that has already now gone through. They announced last year, a little bit earlier than initially expected, that they have kind of brought in this deal. Now, what they did is they both had to go off and get independent valuations in for Hulu. Now, as you would imagine, Disney wants it to be as low as possible. Comcast wants it to be as high as possible. Now, when they agreed to this deal back in 2019, they agreed that the minimum value of Hulu would be $27.5 billion. So that's the lowest it could be. There was also a thing in there that if Comcast didn't continue to invest in Hulu, it would have its share drop down each time, down to about a minimum of 21%. So we often see it thrown around all over the place that Comcast owns 33%. However, Comcast did stop investing, so that might be a little bit lower, but we don't really know how all that's going to come in. Well, according to Reuters, they have revealed, so both companies couldn't come to an agreement, with Disney hiring JP Morgan, who was sort of estimated to be valued at $27.5 billion. They were like, that is the lowest it can, that's all it's worth. It's actually probably even worth a little bit less than that. Whereas Comcast hired Morgan Stanley, who they valued at 40%. Now, if they were within 10% of each other, they were going to split it, and that was kind of the deal that was in place. However, since that isn't the case, they're apparently bringing a third party to do a valuation depending on what they do. That will then sort of determine the cost, and yeah, that's where they all come together. This was all agreed years ago, and in some ways it was good that they came up with the idea of how to get it sorted. It just does mean now that it's a little bit further off from when we would hope for it to happen. It's why we've really not seen Disney fully embrace Hulu yet on Disney Plus. You know, there's been some ads and stuff, but a lot of it is more like selling the bundle. You're not really seeing them say Grey's Anatomy available now on Hulu on Disney Plus in any of the ads or anything like that. We haven't seen Hulu go anywhere because technically Comcast still owns a part of it. Now, lots of reports around the internet, you know, like Disney's going to have to pay about $8 to $9 billion for that 33%. That is probably the bottom line for the minimum if it's valued at 33%. It could be a little bit less than that, so it might not quite get to that. Even at the lowest level, maybe $5.5 to $6 billion would be if they literally were 21% of the company and bottom value. That would be the lowest. But I suspect it'll be somewhere in between, and again, it depends on the valuation. So Disney are still on the hook to pay them this. They have to do it. They have to do that. And I think in general, the Hulu deal has been a huge albatross around the neck of Disney and Disney streaming. They've not been able to utilize the streaming service because they've been basically locked into this Comcast deal where they've been unable to move forward. They've not been able to fully utilize the ability of all their company and get everything into it because of this deal. Essentially, the foresight was probably, you know, at the time in 2019, they thought it was going to continue to grow. Comcast is like, oh yeah, Hulu's worth more, all the rest of it. Simple truth is, here we are 5 years later, and Hulu, I don't think is worth $40 billion. I just don't think it's at that value. Because essentially we're in a consolidation stage right now. If Disney decided to literally go, right, we're going to pull off all of our content off of Hulu, I'm going to take all of it away, we're not going to do the bundle anymore, and there you go, we're going to sell it on the open market, I don't think it'd be going for 40 billion, and that's being on it. I think you've got to take out the Disney content So that's going to be something there. But ultimately, Disney's not been able to move forward because of this deal. It is all very complicated. Hopefully when they get this thing sorted, they can move on and we can start seeing some changes. I suspect once the deal is fully done, we will then hear more about the fact of just Hulu merging in with Disney+. I mean, later today, there's going to be a quarterly financial result. So there could be something announced then, or it could be in the next quarter or the quarter after that. Who knows? Also, internationally, things, you know, they never launched Hulu internationally. They just put the Star Hub in most countries. Comcast didn't like that because they thought they were going to get in on it. And Disney's like, we don't need you for that. So there was a little bit of argy-bargy with that. I fully think that Hulu will become a brand on Disney Plus internationally, because not only are they trying to buy Hulu, they're also trying to sell and kind of do a little bit of a spin-off with Star India in India. So yeah, I think, you know, when you look at all of this as a whole and go, well, what would you do? Would you be like, well, you move this in, move that out? If you're selling that and you're getting that in, it makes sense to move these things around a little bit. But nevertheless, the deal between the two companies still hasn't fully kind of gone through yet. Hopefully we find out pretty soon of what's going on and then we can put this entire thing behind us. Can't believe here we are over 5 years later still talking about this deal. No doubt about it. Bob Iger, he got screwed over with this deal for 20th Century Fox, and the Murdochs obviously got all the money out of him. Comcast played him perfectly of getting him to pay way more than he should have. And this is now still coming back to bite him all these years later. Because let's be honest, Disney had a couple of options. They could have either sold their share in Hulu, that might have made, then they could have focused fully in on Disney Plus. Or, yeah, I don't know. It just, in hindsight, we look back at this stuff and it's like, you can't help but feel like Disney really just didn't make the most of that purchase and way overspent, and we're still feeling the pinch of all this stuff all these years later. And why I think Disney Plus has not been able to reach its full potential, because it's been held back by this big green albatross that is just weighing it down, and they can't move forward. They can't really go after Netflix and Amazon properly on a global scale because of all the branding issues and the costing issues and running two platforms. So hopefully things will get better. But yeah, it's no doubt about it. Disney's going to be ponying up a lot of money to Comcast for the stake. You know, it could be anything up to 13 billion and it down to about 5 billion. So there's a lot at stake here. Obviously, Comcast want the valuation to be as high as possible, and Disney want it to be as low as possible. But I think most people now would look at it and go like, Hulu, the value of it is dropped considerably, I think, since 2019, because it's no longer the same thing that it was. Hulu Live TV is dropping off and all the rest of it. I'm just not convinced that it's going to go as high as 40 billion. I think it almost feels a little bit like the two companies' banks just went, what would you like us to value at? Okay, here's the number, please go away. And can you pay us some money? I think that, and now we're going to get this third party. We don't know necessarily if they brought a third party in at the first point of call and actually set somebody off to do this, so they have something in mind. Who knows? I mean, I wouldn't be at all surprised. I mean, I would have been a bit like, I mean, they may not have wanted to spend the money, but let's be honest, were they ever going to agree on a price? Probably not. But hopefully we find out pretty soon, maybe even today. But nevertheless, let me know what you think of all of this in the comments below. I'm going to go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. Like, follow, and subscribe. And I shall see you guys soon. Laters.